But my beats, they are hard.
This season begins a new era, one that hasn't been seen in over 60 years. Are you ready for some Lions football?
That's why he become the king. And you're a Lion. You gotta step up and be one.
I got one shot, do me, working outside, no sleep, I work hard and I put in work, and I put in work, and I put in work.
We're coming, and we're not backing down.
Yeah, I work so damn hard, I can't lie. And I work so damn hard, I feel tired. But I love my job, and I see myself in that spot on the top and watch. I love when they doubt and I score. Cause it show that I put in work. I guess the proof is in the put in work, man. I work hard and I put in work, and I put in work, and I put in work. Yo, I work hard and I put in work, and I put in work, and I put in work. I got one job, do me, working outside, no sleep, I work hard and I put in work, and I put in work, and I put in work. I put in work, I put in work, I put in work.
We are Florida Memorial University.
Put in work, I put in work.
That's right. Football is back, and it's back in a big way. Welcome to the BCSN SportsWrap. I'm Brian Fulford. That's AD Drew. AD, say hey to the people. How you doing, my man?
Hey, my peoples, how you be?
All right, and you're watching and listening. Obviously, if you're listening to us on our podcast, to the BCSN SportsWrap, part of the Black College Sports Network and Jericho Broadcast Networks. Want to remind you and encourage you to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and search for us on Facebook at MyBCSN1, the number one. On Facebook, you can also find the BCSN Sports Wrap at BCSN Sports Wrap. And always want to encourage you to check out the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Plenty of great shows, a lot of great content that we are putting out. Not only do we talk our sports here, but also you can find great shows like Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. You can always catch that show and its replays on our Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Just go to your Google Play Store, your Apple Store, and do a search, MyJBN or MyBCSN, and that's where you can download the app and get direct access to our show, as well as all of the other shows that are a part of the Jericho Broadcast Network's family. So AD, right there at the beginning of the show, we played that intro for Florida Memorial University, who this past weekend kicked off their first football game and season in 62 years. And I personally was excited that they did this, that they were able to pull this off. I mean, just one, being able to get football back, and then having to try to do it in the current conditions of the pandemic that we're dealing with and doing it in South Florida. I again, kudos to everyone who made it possible with Florida Memorial. Your thoughts?
Yes, definitely excited. I'm glad they were able to put the proper precautions in place to allow the student athletes to play, because it's all about safety. Have not heard any reports of anyone who participated in that game coming down with COVID or COVID-like symptoms. So kudos to both universities for doing what they needed to do, and the conference for doing what it needed to do, so that these athletes had the opportunity to play football. The only downside of it was the anticipation of the football game. The excitement of the football game was better than the result for our Florida Memorial Lions.
Right. Before we get into that, what do you think about just people's thoughts in general? I mean, I think there are some people who did not even know or recall that there was a HBCU playing football this fall. And I know we had to remind people in different ways that, yes, there is a school playing football. But how would you gauge the temperature in the room, so to speak, of, Florida Memorial being the lone wolf?
First of all, Florida Memorial has been kind of the forgotten HBCU among the 4 HBCUs in the state of Florida, being Florida A&M, Bethune-Cookman, obviously the big two, and we know how much news they've made in 2020 with their move from the MEAC to the SWAC. Edward Waters being the oldest HBCU institution in the state of Florida. And everybody's anticipating their move potentially from NAIA up to NCAA Division II. And then you've got this other team that, unless you're in South Florida, Central Florida, that you kind of forget about, Florida Memorial, who gets lost in the shuffle with all the other Florida acronyms. What do I mean by Florida acronyms? Central Florida, South Florida, Florida International,
Florida Atlantic.
Florida Atlantic, and then you get to Florida Memorial. So they get lost in the shuffle of all the acronyms. We're not even talking about where you throw in the Florida States, the West Floridas, the North Floridas, and every other direction of school that Florida has.
Right.
So, yeah, there were a lot of people, HBCU people, who point blank forgot about Florida Memorial was the only school that did not cancel football for whatever reason, or postpone, or whatever adjective that you want to use about football. And then you had some people, once they realized Florida Memorial was still playing, came out and questioned the decision publicly and or privately. Was this the proper decision for Florida Memorial to make? You and I do not sit in the seat to judge what an institution of higher learning does. What you can do is hope that their board of trustees or whatever board that they use makes the right decision, has the proper information, the proper doctors, that the conference does the same thing and puts all the information out, and that they make the decision that they made to play football for the right reason, and hope that it's just not a money grab or anything else, which in this case, I do not think for Florida Memorial that it was a money grab. And what an opportunity they have as the lone wolf out there amongst our HBCUs, Brian.
Yeah, definitely. Special shout out to Dr. Japhus Hardrick, Dr. Japhus Hardrick, the president of Florida Memorial, and athletic director Ernest T. Jones, who, along with Coach Tim Harris, worked diligently to put this and make this debut happen. And unfortunately for Florida Memorial, they've got to start their season On the road, and they have to play the number 9 ranked team in the NAIA in Kaiser University. And Kaiser, now, although the NAIA is not playing any fall sports, obviously the conference, the Mid-South Conference is consisting of a few, probably several teams here in the state of Florida that are playing, even though they're playing. There won't be any championships for, say, a national run, and I don't know. Obviously, the NAIA is planning to play in the spring. I don't know right now if Florida Memorial or any of these schools playing in this fall will do anything in the spring. So this may just be sort of a year to play for a conference championship. But anyway, Kaiser is ranked 9th. Our friends over at computerratings.com had them rated 11th in NAIA. So already that's a tall task. I mean, having to travel to West Palm Beach, where Kaiser plays, beautiful, beautiful field. Got a chance to watch that game online, and I was live tweeting it. Anybody who hopefully followed along. And, obviously the final score turned out to be 62-0. And really it was 48 points in the first half, which really you could focus in on one particular unit. Obviously you have offense, defense, special teams. And what do they say, AD? Games are sometimes lost when one unit is not playing at even semi-functionality or even doing, they always say do your job. So you need all 3 units to do their job well. And if one unit puts the other units in bad positions, it becomes a long day. And unfortunately for Florida Memorial, their special teams unit, from the opening kickoff, they give up a long run on the opening kickoff, and then it turned into, Kaiser starting their first possession inside of the 10-yard line, I believe. They would go on to score quickly. Then after a 3-and-out on offense for Florida Memorial, a bad punt gives Kaiser the ball right back in similar field goal position in the red zone. They score a touchdown, and then the very next possession, a similar situation happened. So, I mean, the special teams just kind of buried Florida Memorial in like a 21-0 hole before it, within like the first 10 minutes of the ball game. I mean, they were down 21-0. And from there, it didn't get any better. And
10 minutes, Brian. With
10 minutes of playing time. 10 minutes of playing time.
With 7:50 remaining in the first quarter, the score was 21-0 Kaiser.
All right, so the first 8 minutes, within the first 8 minutes, yeah, it was. But once again, special teams in those first 3, not like I said, the kickoff, and then 2 special teams gaffes on the first 2 offensive possessions when they went out, 3-and-out, I believe, and next minute you're down 21-0. And I don't think the offense had gotten into a groove.
No. There was one good positive, but you did talk about the offense, though, Brian. Despite all the mishaps on special teams, Florida Memorial actually had 0 turnovers for the game, Brian. So they protected the ball well, but the fourth down killed them. The execution on 4th down, which is when special teams come on.
Yeah, but you had 2 again. You say there's no turnovers, but you had a bad
punt or a block punt is just like a turnover.
Huh?
A bad punt or a block punt or a missed field goal is just like a turnover, except it doesn't officially go in.
It doesn't officially count. Okay, well, yeah, because I was going to say you did have a block punt there in the second quarter, which ended up turning into a score. They scored off that block punt. So
scoop and score.
Yeah. So needless to say, I'm sure, I'm just kind of browsing through some of the quotes. Coach Tim Harris said we struggled in all three phases. Actually, he said when things start off slow for you against anyone really, but especially for us against Kaiser, it put us in bad spots. We couldn't get much anything going. We struggled in all three phases because of it, and we saw where we have to improve going into the weekend. And yeah, honestly, the offense did not look bad when it could go. The defense at times looked good. I think they corrected some of the special teams stuff in the second half. The young man who was the punter, once they actually snapped him the ball, he actually had a couple of punts that were 50-something yard punts. So he's got a little bit of a leg on him. It just, again, bad start. And whatever you want to attribute it to, nerves, it didn't seem like a bad weather day. Whatever it was, it just was a tough spark. 62-0, tough spark. Tough start.
First three possessions for Kaiser, Bryan, 3 plays, 9 yards, 6 plays, 44 yards, 2 plays, 4 yards, So when you have moved the ball, 57 yards, but you have 3 touchdowns, that's a problem, my brother.
Yeah, and I think there were a couple opportunities where Kaiser the score could have gotten worse, and I say that because there were a couple times when Kaiser had got a stop on, say, a 4th down, and they committed a personal foul. There were 2 particular plays I recall on 4th and short or 4th and medium. Defensive penalty advanced the ball for Florida Memorial and really kind of helped them out.
Yeah.
So
Florida Memorial, 143 yards rushing on the day on 47 attempts, which is not bad yardage wise. Only 76 yards on 16 of 27 passing for a total of 219 total yards there, Bryan.
Key stat, AD. How about this? Key stat, 1 for 17 on 3rd downs.
That is definitely a
1 for 17. I mean, that's the fact that you were on in 3rd down 17 times tells you just what kind of day it was. I can't recall I've seen a team have that many 3rd downs. It's been a long time.
And key stat on the other side, Kaiser, red zone, 6 for 6, Bryan.
Yeah. So what's next? So game number 2 for Florida Memorial starts, obviously this week, where the Lions will travel to Ave Maria, which is just outside of Naples, I believe. Ave Maria did not have a good start for themselves last week. They got beat 34-0 by Southeastern. So, look, here, this will be an interesting game for Florida Memorial. I mean, this very well could be the first win of the season. Now, who knows? Florida Memorial or Ave Maria looks bad against Southeastern, but I think this is your judgment game to see where you are, because obviously Florida Memorial, statistically speaking, this is a winnable ball game based on performance. But then again, who are you and how do you compare against Ave Maria, right?
Yes, exactly. Last week, Ave Maria gave up 427 passing yards, 140 rushing yards, for a total of 567 yards. So if the Lions could get back into the lab and get some things figured out, that looks like there can be some opportunities against this opponent here on next Saturday.
Yeah, this games that are always a little more fairly balanced should be a lot more interesting. So I'm still on the fit. Look, I may end up traveling down to that game. It's only about 3.5 hours from my home base. So yeah, there's a strong likelihood I may be down there covering this game live, AD.
Well, we definitely want to see you down there, Bryan. With the Lions being the only HBCU that is playing football right now, what else do you have to do if you want to see some HBCUs?
Right. All right. Any other final thoughts on Florida Memorial and football before we move on to another big story that kind of popped up on us this past week?
No, except make sure you go to FMUathletics.com, and the game will be live streamed on the Florida Memorial Athletic website. So please tune in, watch them, support the only HBCU that we do have out there playing right now.
And we will be broadcasting the first home game on October 3rd. So that game will be broadcast on the Black College Sports Network, as well as, I believe, 2 other games in October for Florida Memorial.
Including homecoming.
Yes, including homecoming. All right. It's interesting that we are talking about NAIA schools to start our show, because our other lead story involves Xavier University out in New Orleans. Of course, we had the chance to cover the GCAC basketball tournament, men and women's, in New Orleans, hosted by Xavier University. Well, AD, the announcement came out earlier this week. I think it was Monday or Tuesday, probably Tuesday, I think, if I'm looking at my calendar correctly. Monday, excuse me, it came out Monday. Anyway, the announcement says Xavier University of Louisiana announced Tuesday that it will join the NAIA's Red River Athletic Conference as a full member effective July 1st, 2021. Xavier was unanimously approved in August by Red River Athletic Conference member institutions to become the league's 13th member. When this will effectively end Xavier's 40-year affiliation with the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, of which it was a charter member in 1981. And it begs the question, AD, what will happen to the GCAC? But, on a more personal level for Xavier, what does this move do for them?
We'll start off with B, because A would probably take me significant time to answer A. So we'll start off with question number 2 first.
Okay.
It allows Xavier to get the best of both cultures. There are 5 additional HBCUs already in the Red River Athletic Conference, and gives Xavier an opportunity to step backwards in time. And what do I mean by stepping backwards? The original GCAC was a hybrid conference, which is the best way that I could put it. What do I mean by a hybrid conference, Bryan? The GCAC was not always an HBCU conference. As we think of now, they've been exclusively an HBCU conference only since 2010. Currently, the GCAC exists of Dillard University in New Orleans, Edward Waters in Jacksonville, Philander Smith, Little Rock, Arkansas, Rust and Holly Springs, Arkansas, Talladega, Alabama, Tougaloo, Mississippi, and Xavier, New Orleans. If we take a step back to, I believe it was December of last year, SUNO, Southern University of New Orleans, dropped completely out of GCAC and dropped all their athletic programs due to financial constraints. So, that's been kind of the first domino to actually fall happened last December for the GCAC conference. And the GCAC, when it was founded in 1981, had both HBCUs and historically white colleges and universities. The original members were Belhaven, Dillard, Louisiana College, Spring Hill, Tougaloo, William and Carey, and Xavier, of which Tougaloo and Dillard are the only two original members that will be left after the 2020-2021 season. So, as you can see, the conference has had a number of non-HBCU members throughout its past. Other non-HBCU members of the GCAC have been Mobile College, which was there from 85 to 2010, Loyola of Louisiana in New Orleans, which was there from 95 to 2010. Belhaven returned. They were there originally from 81 to 2000, and then again from 2002 to 2010. And Louisiana State Shreveport, which was there from 2000 to 2010. So we can see that the GCAC has gone back and forth with non-HBCU and HBCU members. In order for this conference to survive, they will definitely have to look at adding non-HBCU members to the conference. Now,
well, it begs the question, which we also asked about the MEAC, where are those schools coming from? It's not like there's a bunch of independents sitting out there. So in short, you're probably going to have to be able to present yourselves in a way where you're going to have to get other, the same way the Red River became attractive to Xavier, you're going to have to make your conference attractive to people who are in other conferences, probably, right? If you are to survive.
Brian, if you go back to the article that I wrote back in April about conference realignment, I actually mentioned a couple of schools that would be good candidates for the GCAC. What I failed to mention and did not see coming, and kudos to the people at Xavier University for keeping this one quiet-lipped and under the covers, that they were looking going to the Red River. But one being Oakwood in Huntsville, Alabama, and two being Fisk in Nashville, who is a former member of the GCAC. Fisk was in the GCAC from 2010 to 2014. Those are two schools that the GCAC needs to be on the phone talking to right now, trying to get them into the conference, especially when you consider that Edward Waters is looking to make the transition from NAIA to Division II, and one other GCAC school has put in their paperwork to leave the conference. We're not calling them by name right now. And there's potential that the Red River, let's think about it, Brian. 13 is such an ugly number, Brian.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on.
13. Let me just say this. Nobody loves the number 13. So is the Red River looking at pulling another GCAC school into their conference to bring it even at 14, to create even divisions? Just throwing it out there for conversation.
The GCAC only has 6 or 7 members.
They have 7 members now after Suno left. They must maintain 6 members in any sport to get to receive an automatic bid to the tournament of that particular sport. If you notice, Xavier has added multiple sports over the last couple of years, and they want the athletes to have the opportunity to compete on a national stage, which is the primary reason for them moving from the GCAC to the Red River for their athletics. And we will have interviews in a subsequent show with some members of the Xavier University's staff. So please make sure you tune in for those interviews that we will have as we are putting those together. We're going to give Xavier an opportunity to get on and to give their side of the story and to tell the story in their manner.
Looking at the footprint of the Red River Athletic Conference, for those who don't know, it essentially looks like it's made up of Louisiana, Texas, and Arkansas, possibly. There's a school
Oklahoma.
that sits.
Oklahoma.
There's a school that sits just a little north of Texarkana. Is that Oklahoma?
Yeah, I believe they've got a school in Oklahoma. I don't have the Red River map.
Okay, that must be the school there that's in Texarkana. That's nope. That's well, actually, that's Texas A&M University Texarkana, which is right on the north border. But every other school that I'm seeing, AD,
is in Texas or Louisiana.
Is Texas or Louisiana.
Yeah.
And so you've got a lot of schools right along the I-20 interstate from Shreveport to Dallas. I mean, literally, there are 5 schools right along that path. Then you have LSU Alexandria, which is obviously Alexandria, Louisiana, duh. And then you got a school in Austin, a couple in San Antonio. You've got University of Houston, Victoria. And then you have, as I try to maneuver this silly map on my computer.
Pretty much you've got I-20 and I-10.
Well, I guess, do you have I-10 now?
Well, 10 takes you to Houston, so that's why I was thinking.
I was just looking at, there's somebody that's out west, far west Texas, and that is University of Southwest, New Mexico. So they actually stretch into New Mexico, but
okay.
Yeah, but anyway, that's pretty interesting, man. It's sad to think that the GCAC will come to an end. Well, let me not say that. That's wrong. It's inaccurate. That Xavier's affiliation with the GCAC is coming to an end, given their strong rivalries that they've created with, of course, Dillard, which is right in Louisiana, and just 40 years. It's so hard to. But look, there's no full-time commissioner.
Dillard Xavier will continue to play as long as they're both NAIA schools.
I'm sure, yes. There's no full-time commissioner in the conference, and I think that really hurts stability and growth. And so if you wanted to look at the reasons why Xavier moved, I know Xavier added some sports, and then the fact that there's no commissioner in the conference, all of that kind of played into it.
One other school that I want to mention, Brian, GCAC possibly looking at as far as adding to the conference.
Yeah.
Arkansas Baptist. Currently, 2-year school transitioning back to a 4-year school. Don't know if they completed their transition back to a 4-year school, but that would be a possible school that they could look at adding, especially be a natural rival for Philander Smith, with both of them being in Arkansas.
All right. Well said. So we'll be taking a look at, I know we'll have those interviews a little later, and I'm sure we'll drop those interviews with coaches and hopefully the athletic director at Xavier. When we come out of this upcoming break, AD, we've got some news and notes, maybe I guess the first part of news and notes regarding some new information that came out regarding the young man, Jermaine Stevens Jr., who recently passed away and initially reported as complications with COVID. We have more detail, which we'll share coming up out of the break. But before we go to the break, we've got this video clip from our most recent GCAC basketball tournament, which took place right before the world stopped, right before the sports world stopped in March.
Last HBCU to win a conference championship.
That's right. That would be the Xavier University. That would be Xavier University. And so this clip, we don't know if this will be one of the last moments of them winning a GCAC tournament, but it is definitely a highlight to consider. So enjoy this clip, and then we come back from the break. We got more for you on the BCSN Sports Wrap.
So the question here's Tougaloo picking up full court pressure. Right. Now, everybody's in the bonus, so cheap fouls here can hurt you. Send someone to the line. Mart running the baseline. Finds Dumas. There's TJ. He's got to get it across. Takes his time. Into the lane. There's the traffic. 20 seconds. Coach calls for a spread. Ball in the hands of TJ Jones. Right down the middle of the lane. Off the and he gets it. TJ Jones makes that. And we had a quick timeout. Yes. We'll see what happens. Williams has it. Are they going to foul him? Oh, he kicked off his foot. He lost the ball. And that's going to do it. Xavier, the Gold Rush. The Gold Rush are champions of the GCAC. Final score. Xavier 78. Tougaloo 75. An unbelievable finish to this ball game. The first GCAC tournament championship since 1996.
My God, it's another sad day in America.
Painful to be introduced to George Floyd during his last breath
with the cop's knee on his neck.
On his neck.
He deserves so much more.
How many black lives have to be taken before something is done?
We are not a threat.
I am shaking as I type. This has got to stop.
We are sick of it.
We need conviction.
I just want us all to live.
Death will not stop until the powers that be are finally held accountable.
Don't look away from the truth until every one of us are free from white supremacy.
The world stands with you.
Criminalizing and killing of black and brown bodies is not new. It's as old as America. It's just getting filmed more.
Do you know what it feels like to be hunted? To have a new hashtag for a dead black person every single day? How does one plan a life if they aren't sure they will have a life to plan?
Trayvon,
Armstrong,
Anderson,
Deborah Davis,
Megan
Holliday,
Jeremiah
Janae,
Michelle Lee
Clark,
Shepard,
George Floyd. His name was George Floyd. Say his name. Say his name.
George Floyd, say his name.
Say their names. Once again, and always, we fight for justice.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Rest in power, beautiful. You didn't deserve this.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
Even though there's so much against us, you will see me choose to protect myself
and my community from the coronavirus by wearing a face covering.
And even with my face covered, you will see me making music
and bringing light to all, no matter the time.
Join me in wearing a face covering
to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because covering your face is one small act of kindness
that has the power to bring us together.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here. Thanks for watching and joining us. Want to remind you, follow us personally on Twitter. You can find Drew at BCSN Drew on Twitter. You can find me at DRB365 on Twitter and Instagram at that. And of course, want to always encourage you to make sure you like and subscribe to our BCSN Sports Wrap podcast, which you can find on Spotify, Anchor, Google and Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Overcast, Podcast Republic. Did I cover them all? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think I covered them all. So there's about 7 or 8 different places. I think we're almost everywhere we need to be with the exception of iHeartRadio. So all you got to do is type in BCSN Sports Wrap. Make sure you're subscribed. Give us a like. Give us a comment. Let us know what you think of the content that we are out here trying to provide. Maybe we're out here adding some unique perspectives to something. So Drew, my quarterback, my guy, Peyton Manning, 18, the sheriff, University of Tennessee grad, New Orleans native, forever Indianapolis Colts, number 18. A story came out recently that Peyton Manning had endowed some scholarships through Manning's Payback Foundation. That's Payback, P-E-Y. And that the foundation was going to endow a half-dozen scholarship at HBCUs in Louisiana and Tennessee. Of course, he played at the University of Tennessee. He's from Louisiana. Louisiana, of course, we know there's many HBCUs down in that market. It was actually through Doug Williams. Doug Williams is the one who actually told ESPN that that Peyton's foundation was endowing a half-dozen scholarships to HBCUs. And so he was really doing it and didn't want it, knowing Peyton, he didn't want any credit, didn't want any exposure on it. He probably is one of those guys who just does things because it's the right thing to do at the right time. But the schools that I believe are getting this endowment, the schools in Tennessee include, Fisk University in Nashville. I don't know if Tennessee State.
I have to on my list.
You got Tennessee State. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I can't imagine Fisk being right there in Nashville that you don't give anything to Tennessee State. And then also, let's see, where else? There's some schools in Louisiana, correct?
The schools that I have are Southern, Tennessee State, Grambling, and Fisk. Not sure. They said they were going to 6 schools. I'm not sure who the other.
What was that list again? Give me that rundown. I know you said Fisk.
Fisk, Tennessee State, Southern, and Grambling are 4 of the 6. I don't know who the other 2 schools are according to the list that I have. But I don't know if you've got the other 2 schools. But what I found interesting about this, Brian, is that he actually not only did he endow them, but he named the scholarship in honor of a famous alum of those particular schools. For instance, the one at Southern University is named after Harold Carmichael, who played at Southern University, former Philadelphia Eagle. The one at Tennessee State is named after Wilbur Rudolph, one of the greatest female track stars in U.S. Olympic history.
Right.
The one in Grambling goes out to Doug Williams, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer and Washington Football Club Super Bowl winning quarterback. And the final one that I have a name on at FIS goes out to Dr. Revis L. Mitchell, who spent 40 years at the school. Excuse me. There's also one at Xavier University of Louisiana. Boy, talk about making some news 2 times within a week. Named after its former president, Dr. Norman Francis. And the 6th one goes to Dillard University in New Orleans, named after Dr. Michael Lomax, president and CEO of the United Negro College Fund. So Peyton took care of his hometown, taking care of Xavier and Dillard. Then he took care of the town where his father played quarterback, New Orleans also. Took care of Baton Rouge, which was the predominant HBCU in the state that he grew up in. Also, the other predominant HBCUs that was in the state that he grew up in, Grambling. Took care of those 2 legendary programs. Then he took care of the 2 HBCUs in the town where he played college football at, Tennessee State and FIS. Kudos to Peyton Manning.
Yeah, for sure. And truthfully, like I said, we probably would have never heard about this, and I'm sure Doug Williams was well-intentioned. I don't know all the particulars surrounding him releasing that information, but I'm sure Peyton did not want it going out. But, hey, it's out. Moving on, another news note story that came out. I saw this first on HBCUsports.com. Twin volleyball standouts decommit from Texas A&M to play at Howard. And the Q rating on Howard University continues to buzz. I mean, it's like, Howard, really? I mean, is anybody, it's great for Howard, but, definitely they're soaking up all of the positive press and attention over the past year. I mean, it's Howard or bust. I mean, these 2.
These athletes realize, I just hope they realize that Howard is an academic university first. I just want them to remember that. No knocks against Howard. I love what they're doing. I love that they're getting there.
Are you saying you can't do both? You can't be a powerful academic program and have talented, great sports programs? Is that what you're saying, AD?
I'm saying Howard has not focused on both in the past. Their history has said that. But I'm thankful and grateful that Howard put itself in a position where they can make a mark on the field and in the corporate classroom also.
So again, these young ladies, Bria and Simone Woodard, were committed to go to Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M is funny. They've had their own sort of negativity or negative press regarding some statues. Remember when that whole thing was going around, when people were snatching Confederate or anything that was related or linked back to the Confederacy, they were snatching statues off of their perch back in, I'd say, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So I'm only speculating as to whether their decommitment has to do with some of the negative press that Texas A&M has gotten. But anyway, the Woodard twins chose to play at Howard, and Howard volleyball has really been a good program over the past decade. I think they have challenged I don't have it in front of me, but I know they have challenged for the MEAC championship multiple times over the last year. And if I recall correctly, I think the young ladies are about 6'3". Did you catch the height? I'm clicking on prepvolleyball.com to see if it's got their height.
While you look at that, one thing I do want to note, Brian, is maybe one of the reasons that these young ladies chose Howard says that they will become 5th generation HBCU students. So obviously HBCUs run deep within their family roots. So
yeah, and they are 6'3". So I mean, they're definitely 6'3". It's always interesting to see. And you know, the generation thing is huge, and I'll just say this: if you build it, they will come. The old saying is, and I think there's some truth to that. If you build a solid program and are running your program right, and you're balancing it with the strong academics that a school like Howard has, there's, you know, at this time in what's going on in the world, you know, this is a great opportunity for HBCUs to remind young people that, hey, A, we exist, you know, B, we are preparing future leaders of America, doctors, lawyers, so on and so forth. And that the experience you're going to get, it's unique. It's unique in the sense that it grows you as a person, prepares you for this world. It ain't perfect, you know, nothing is, but you know, there's a little something different and a little closer to home. That makes HBCUs what they are.
There's only one question that will be yet to be determined, Brian.
Right.
That's going to be, will McCool Maker still be on campus when these 2 young ladies arrive? Well,
here's the thing. Howard right now is doing online courses. So McCool Maker, and I did find this out. I did inquire. McCool Maker is taking classes right now online with Howard, at Howard. So, you know, all of the speculation about was he on campus, blah, 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 is he signed? McCool is there. So assuming all things go as we think they might in terms of the upcoming basketball season, I expect to see him playing basketball for Howard University this upcoming season, as well as Noelle Eastern, who's
when these 2 young ladies arrive.
Huh?
Will he still be there next season when these 2 young ladies arrive?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good one. Who knows? I can't answer that one. But yeah, you know, AD, we've got to start we have neglected volleyball. I think we've got to start planning and putting together just a volleyball only show where we talk to maybe a couple of coaches, a couple of players, maybe, because all of the press and the attention in the fall has gone towards football, playing or not playing, but volleyball is the other big sport in the fall. And I don't know about you, but I enjoy the sport of volleyball. So I definitely think we got to put that together. All right, moving on. Other news and notes. Jackson State, of course, the SWAC put out their spring schedule, so we know what the conference schedule is looking like for Jackson State and other schools in the SWAC. Jackson State had come out and said that they were going to play they were going to play their 7th game, or they had a bye week, if I'm not mistaken, AD, or they had a week off on the original schedule. They were going to play Southern. So thus keeping alive the boombox, obviously the sonic boom and the human jukebox. That is a classic matchup, a big money draw, and assuming that if they do allow fans in the stands, that was going to be a big thing. But anyway, so Jackson State had that on the schedule. along with the regular SWAC conference schedule. Then they just recently added an 8th game to this schedule, and they will take on Edward Waters College. Talk a little bit about that for a moment, AD.
Was Edward Waters originally supposed to play Jackson, or did they have a return game with Southern this year? I know they had a SWAC team on the schedule. I do not remember who that was.
I'll tell you if you keep talking. I'll see if it's up, if it's still up on their site.
If it's still up. But, you know, first of all, good opportunity for Edward Waters to get in, and let's be real. It's a check game for Edward Waters. Check probably is not going to be as big as it would have been if they would have fans in the stands, but still an opportunity for Edward Waters to play in. This game may be the opening game for HBCU football, Brian, because as of right now, this is the earliest scheduled game that we have for two HBCU teams to be playing each other. And Jackson State think they slick. And if Buddy Charles Bishop is out there listening to us from inside the HBCU's Sports Lab with Dr. Gaville, with Mike and Charles. Charles, y'all think y'all slick. Y'all went out and found a warm-up game before you got into SWAC play. So now the question is, since Jackson State has opened up that can of worms, how many other people are going to go fishing, Brian?
Yeah, real interesting. I'm just taking a peek here at what was to be the schedule for EWC. It looks like they didn't have an FBS. I'm normally seeing, originally it was supposed to be an F. Well, you got a D2 schedule. Pretty much you got, Morehouse. You got Morehouse, Lane, Miles, Tuskegee. They did have a game against Florida Memorial. They did have a game against Allen University. So it was primarily an SIAC schedule.
Right, just a straight D2 NAIA schedule this year.
And this is year 2, or however they're going to call it. This is the second year of that what do you call it? The provisional, the provisional period, which of course Savannah State just finished their provisional 2 years and to become a full-time D2.
Allen just entered theirs.
Allen entered there. So this is the second for Edward Waters. And if Edward Waters does everything here by the summer, they technically would get the possibly official word that you are Division II NCAA if things worked out. I don't know.
And they have an open invitation from the SIAC.
Yes, exactly. So, it would seem the fact that you had games scheduled, that it's still a desire to do that. Drew, we talked about the NAIA not playing in the fall, but they are going to play in the spring. They recently dropped a release saying that the fall sports championships were postponed. Some of the new dates on when that is going to be released, they did state that the football national championship would occur on a Monday for the first time, the Monday after Mother's Day, actually, and it would take place at Eddie G. Robinson Stadium at Grambling.
Monday football in May, Brian. Can you thunk it?
No, it's hard to believe. Monday, May 10th is when that would take place. The women's soccer national championship was relocated from Orange Beach, Alabama, to Foley, Alabama, which seems like it's just a rock. I'm sorry?
It's literally right around the corner.
Right, yeah. It looks like it was going to be
5 miles apart.
Yeah, so the championships are supposed to take place April 27th through May 3rd. That's the women's. The men's takes place the next week. in Columbia County, Georgia is who they are, it looks like they are negotiating with. That is going to take place May 4th through the 10th. So the following week. Volleyball going to stay at Sioux City, Iowa. And it's scheduled to run from April 27th to May 1st. And, you brought this up, AD, that, look, there's already going to be challenges enough. And the NAIA is going to be no different in that you're going to have fall sports running at the same time as your traditional spring sports. And, hopefully these staffs and schools do a good job of spreading things out so that way you can play.
They've got about an 8-week stretch from mid-March through mid-May where the way it's looking, that you're going to have a championship pretty much every week from mid-March to mid-May for NAIA.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how it affects the NAIA schedule. Another news and notes, football-related topic. Again, finally, the Big Ten and some of their administrators decided to resume football on October 24th. And I guess finally the pressure of players, parents, coaches, the president, all finally weighed in. And I think AD, it was a matter of you can't have football playing in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, Indiana, and watch, hey, you mean Penn State, Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana, and Purdue, you mean those schools can't play? I mean, it just, I understand and respect the concerns, but it's still a bad look. The optics don't look good. And so I'm not surprised that the Big Ten chose to double back, revote, and what do you know, based on the revote, hey, we're playing football.
Yeah. Let's go back to the original decision. I think the Big Ten would have been better if they would have done what the SWAC did and used the word postpone. Do what the SIAC did and use the word suspend instead of using the word cancel, because now it looks like the Big Ten is backtracking, eating crow, doing the 180, however you want to put it, or if they would have used one of those other adjectives, then this would have been a natural move. Hey, we done finally figured it out. This is our plan. Now, nobody wanted to be the first ones back. The Big Ten has seen that, like you said, what's going on with high school football in these particular states. Mm-hmm. What's been going on with professional sports in general. These 2 weeks of college football that we've had thus far. What's been going on with those? They've got a little bit of data. They've had a little bit more time. And if they would have said that from the beginning, suspend, the Big Ten would look better itself. I think because they did flub it at the beginning, I think that may be why they came out a little bit stronger than the other conferences. They have a number. If it's more than 5% of the players or staff, or I forgot how they put that number together, they're going to shut it down. They have those magic triggers when they're going to shut the program down for 7 days. They had that magic trigger when they're going to shut it down for X amount of days based upon the number of positive COVID tests. They've got the rapid testing in place. They're going to be tested every day. So the Big Ten came out stronger than the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 with their program when they finally did come out with it. So they did get that right. They had to come out with something stronger. Now, let's be real. And this is not just for the Big Ten. This is all these conferences. The chances everybody gets to play all of their games in the conference are probably going to be slim to none. we've already seen games in the ACC had to get moved due to positive COVID tests. And it's going to continue. The only difference is the Big Ten has no margin for error. And one last thing, I like the championship week. 1 East plays 1 West. 2 East plays 2 West, and so forth and so on until you get to 7v7 to give them that extra game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good for all the other teams. You know, you make a whole weekend out of it. I mean, you were going to get 1 versus 1 anyway. You making 2 versus 2 play each other and 3-3, 4-4 is just really an extra game. Yeah. I guess
autograph for the Big Ten Network. Let's be real.
But I guess it could be rematches in that. So that's a possibility too. I don't know what you call that.
Well, Michigan, Ohio State are on the same side, but could you imagine a Penn State Michigan game twice in 1 year?
Right. Exactly. I mean, it'll be low possibility, but it still could happen.
Or Iowa and Indiana, or I'm not quite sure. I don't remember who's East and West in the Big Ten, or Wisconsin against a Penn State twice in 1 year. You know, it's going to be good. You know, the one good thing, you won't see Michigan, Ohio State in back-to-back weeks because they're on the same side.
The one thing that I think will be interesting to kind of see how it plays out, they're starting almost a month after the SEC. And so these polls that are out right now, and obviously the polls help determine which teams are going to be in the Final Four when the playoff committee votes. Where is, when Ohio State comes back, where do you stick Ohio State? Where will voters, I mean, who knows? They may.
Brian, you won't have to wait till Ohio State comes back. The fact that this has come out, I guarantee you're going to see Ohio State in the top 5.
Next poll that comes out?
Next poll, or the first real poll, because, you know, the first real poll has traditionally come out the 1st of October anyway.
Oh, you're talking about the college playoff poll.
Right. Ohio State will be in the top 5 when the first real poll comes out. No doubt about it.
Yeah, that'll be. Well, that's the interesting topic debate that I know will be coming up out of this. One last news and notes nugget before we go. Actually, a couple of news. The young man, Jermaine Stevens.
Before you get into that, did we go to the spring proposal for the FCS playoffs? Did we skip that?
If you want to talk about it, we can. No, I didn't.
We just throw the dates out there. That
all right. Go ahead.
Right now, there's a proposal for the FCS playoffs beginning on April 18th and concluding on May 21st. Instead of the typical 24 teams, it would be cut to 16 teams, including 10 automatic bids and 6 at large.
Mm-hmm.
Given the dates, and this article comes from themacreport.com. Given the dates, since April 18th is a Sunday, that means that the first round will probably begin on April 24th, and the national championship game would be held on May 15th. Now, here's the question of the day, Brian. April 24th. SWAC bye week before their championship game. MEAC bye week before its championship game. We also know the SWAC and the MEAC have 2 extra weeks built into their schedule. Do SWAC and the MEAC move their schedule up to possibly try to compete for the playoffs? Number one. Number two, if you are the first place team in the SWAC or the BAC, do you forego the championship game if you get an at-large bid to the FCS playoffs?
I don't think you can forego that championship game. That would be, I mean, you're probably somehow contractually obligated to go play if you're the champion. That'd be interesting to see if somebody were to try to pull that. I'm in favor of the playoff game, to be honest with you, Drew. I mean, I think, again, unique year, going with that angle, why not move things up a bit and try to make yourself available so that after you play your championship game, your conference, and who knows, maybe you don't, well, it's already in the books. I don't know. Maybe you don't play a conference championship game. But let's just say you go ahead and decide to play that. Go ahead. I mean, do we really? I know. See, I think the big X factor is crowds, because if you're allowing people in the stands, you're going to want to have a MEAC versus SWAC, and it may not be the Celebration Bowl, but I'm sure you can find a neutral site. If both conferences work together, you can probably find a neutral site. But me personally, this one year, I say try to get yourself into the playoffs. Be one of the 6 at-larges, because they're not guaranteed one of the 10 spots, automatic bids. That's already been established. Be one of the 6 at-large bids, yeah?
Well, how do you get an at-large bid if you're playing a conference on the schedule, Bryan?
That was a question I remember I asked Craig Haley when we did that podcast when I had the interview with him.
Especially if you're a SWAC team who has not defeated a non-HBCU team in at least the last 3 years. Yeah. And pretty much if you're not named North Carolina A&T, you're probably not going to get a at-large bid out of the MEAC.
Yeah. That's a tough spot to be in, no doubt. Again, I'm going to push them. Hey, move those dates up. Can you get into the playoffs? Can you make yourself available? That's all I can really say, because there are some other factors which could change that. And I think attendance or being allowed to have fans is one of them. So did I answer your question? All right. So what I was going to share, one of our last couple of stories here in the news and notes segment, the family of Jermaine Stevens Jr. released earlier today, as of this podcast recording, that he died from a blood clot in his heart after contracting COVID. So I do guess technically you can say the blood clot being a result of COVID, that COVID is responsible for this young man's death. I know that was one of the things that when the story first came up, I think the automatic assumption was it was COVID related, and that news was not out there yet. Or I guess I should say the proper medical examinations hadn't been done to make that statement. But now, almost a week or two since his tragic death, the family has stated that it took place. And I'll tell you, that's something that I have a family member that works at a hospital, and that's one of the things she told me, is that, in fact, yes, there are COVID patients who get blood clots. And so, unfortunately for Stevens, it went to his heart. So.
And they myocarditis, Bryan, which is inflammation of the heart. And that was one of those things that the Big Ten was concerned about when they originally canceled the season because it has been found in younger athletes who have contracted COVID. It's a rare condition and something that has not shown up in most people until the COVID-19 has come on the scene, you know. And there's always been heart conditions that athletes have been discovered throughout the years that they don't discover until their passing. But this has been one that has been commonly linked to COVID since COVID has been thrust upon us in 2020.
So after learning that news, does it change your mind at all? The fact that there are young men, whether it be high school, college, or in the pros that are playing football. I don't know if you've, I don't know. I feel like we've talked about this, but where do you, what are your thoughts? Where does it put you right now?
With this particular issue, I would really want to know more about this issue and how we can better test that when we give our athletes their annual physical to even say that they're clear. And Brian, we know we've all had those athlete physicals. Hit your knee, cough 3 times, and clear, go play.
Yeah.
So, you know, is this something that could be picked up in that preseason physical, Brian? This condition, those who could possibly contract COVID with that condition.
It's funny you bring up preseason physicals, as that was a topic my sister and I were going back and forth about. Remember in either elementary or junior high when you used to have physicals and they would check for all kinds of stuff, you know, scoliosis, other things, you know, you had to cough,
where they rub your spine and all that.
Yes, yeah, you know, you talk, and it just brought that up, the fact that none of that stuff happens nowadays, and the fact that here you are, maybe something as simple as your breathing patterns or what you're prone to. I don't know, doing some kind of exams, that all that seems to have gone away. And it's like you do less of that, and now all of a sudden, when guys get ill or things happen, you know, you start second guessing, and maybe this could have been prevented with with better pre-examinations. That's maybe how I want to say it.
Right. You want to talk about, let's talk on the high school level. Let's just say you've got 50, 60 football players. You know, you've got one doctor that you bring to the high school gym, and he's got to run through all 50 of those players in about 2 to 3 hours, Brian. And, you know, you may pay what, $10 per, the kid may pay $10 per physical.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about, the tap your knee, cough 3 times physical, versus if you actually go to your primary physician who will give you that sports physical, and you're there for an hour. But here's the problem. If it's not your annual physical, you as mom, dad, gotta pay for that physical out your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So if I gotta pay for a doctor visit out my pocket, and how many 13, 14, 15-year-olds aren't quote unquote healthy? They're all healthy at that age. So I'm just go down here and get this $10 physical, so Junior can play football and get this scholarship that's worth $50,000 a year too. Where are our priorities? And I know there are some states that had at one time had banned those mass physicals like I'm talking about. But, you know, we relaxed the rules, something happened, then we over tighten them, and then we relax them again, and then we'll over tighten them again. I think this is the time to tighten those rules back up and give real physicals so that we can pick up conditions like this.
One final note before we go to break. Fort Valley State University is mourning the loss of D'Angelo Strickland, a grad student who passed away on September 9th in an automobile accident. He was 22 years old. He's a young man who was recently accepted into Fort Valley State's clinical mental health counseling graduate program. He had completed his Bachelor of Business Administration and Marketing at Fort Valley. And he was also a scholar athlete or a scholar student. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that stands out here in the information about him. Yeah, I don't have, I was just trying to read through here. Let's see if there was anything here. Mark Sherrill, he Fort Valley State men's head basketball coach, had the privilege of coaching Strickland for the past 2 years, stayed in contact with both his former player and his mother through the pandemic. Shortly before Strickland's death, Coach Sherrill said he had the opportunity to tell how proud he was of his former players' tenacity and accomplishments. And I'm reading this from HBCUsports.com. Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts there, AD, or anything you read there? Is that information came also from
Did not play high school basketball, but ended up becoming a starter for Fort Valley and graduating. That right there tells you the character of this young man right there. Overcoming a lot of odds. And our thoughts and prayers are with this young man's family, Coach Sherrill, Athletic Director Holloman, and the rest of the Fort Valley athletic staff and family.
All right. Coming up after the break, special segment, an interview with our good friend Kris Ferguson of D2Football.com. Kris, nice enough to join us. Obviously, there's no football to write about, but Kris has been staying busy in his house, and we get a chance to kind of talk about the Division II. I mean, CIAA, SIAC, they really have been off the radar, Drew, since the announcement that they were going to suspend fall sports. The MEAC and SWAC have sucked up all the air in the room over the past 2 months as it's been. But we just want to kind of just talk about them, talk about what we missed. I mean, this is a weekend where there were some exciting Division II football games going on that we should have been watching, but unfortunately due to COVID, that's not possible, or it never happened. It wasn't going to happen. So, but it still doesn't stop us from talking about it. And so we brought in Kris. And so coming up after this break, you're going to hear that interview with Kris Ferguson. And then a little bit later in the show, we're going to close it up with our new segment, coming up. So you make sure to stay tuned. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. We'll be back right after these words.
We are back. For the first time in 62 years, the Florida Memorial Lions will hit the gridiron, and their home games will be streamed by the Black College Sports Network at www.fmuathletics.com, www.mybcsn.net, and on the MyBCSN app, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan and AD here, and joining us in this segment, our good friend from D2Football.com, Kris Ferguson. Kris, the beard is looking lovely, man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, that's what happens when you haven't been to the barber in, 6 months or so. And I finally learned how to shave my head for the first time during the pandemic. So it's been real interesting around here.
That's what makes James Hard jealous right now, Kris.
Well, I try to trim it up just a little bit so I'm not chewing on it when I'm eating, because I feel like that's probably what he does to be a little bit classier.
What has been the challenge with that kind of growth? I'm jealous. I'm just going to be honest, because I have never been able to fully get whatever stubble I get around to grow out all the way. So what's been the challenge or experience been like over the last several months?
I mean, I just tell people that I've become rather high maintenance over time as I've grown the beard. You got to moisturize it and you got to wash it. And so, when women, they're like, well, I need to do my hair. And I'm like, well, I need to do mine too. Because, it could take up, a good hour or so to wash, blow dry, and
Wait,
then
you say blow dry.
Yes,
yeah.
you did.
Yes. And you still got to edge up and everything. So yeah, it takes some time.
And you mentioned you have been working from home for pretty much since March, and I feel like, I've gone back to work. AD's gone back to work. I feel like you might be I feel like you're one of the last people I know that's still working from home. Does it feel like that for you? I mean, what are your friends and other people you associate with? What are they saying? Are they still working at home, or are they out and about?
There are a lot of people that have gone back to work in some capacity. For us, we just haven't done so, and we probably won't till at least January next year at a minimum.
Wow.
So, it's just been accustomed to getting, using Zoom or using like Microsoft Teams, and it forces you to do a lot more talking. I'm introverted by nature, but I also manage people, so I have to learn to, get up in the morning and put on my game face and, have conversations with a lot of different people at work. And so, being here at home, I still am somewhat social. I just don't have the physical interaction. And I think that's been a bit of an adjustment. They talk a lot about mental health, and like for me, I've had those emotional moments. I've had those just difficult, restless evenings. And, it's been a little tough from that standpoint, but I've taken the time to try to do a lot of different things and a lot of new things that I have not had the chance to do in a long time, and find ways to kind of enrich myself. And I mean, I started working out again, cooking a whole lot more, new channels and all kinds of stuff to keep myself occupied. But I stay at home most of the time. I don't really go out except to maybe go to the post office or take a walk. But I may not drive anywhere for 3 or 4 days at a time. So it's certainly different for somebody that, people, even when I would travel for work, I would find ways to go to games, because I don't live on the East Coast, and I live in SWAC territory. So, to go out to a game for a CIAA means that I have to find a way to make it work with my work job and on the weekends. And people have been surprised to see me. A couple of years ago, I went to New York. I was in New York for Bowie State when they played up there, first game of the season. I went to Chowan and UVA Wise last season, and all kinds of other games that have just come up over time. Like this year, I was really excited to go to Bowie State and Texas A&M at Commerce.
Yeah.
And I had made plans to go to that game, and unfortunately it didn't work. But there may be another D2 game that, Lone Star game that I might try to go to if the crowds don't look too heavy, and put my mask on. But yeah, it's just I try to weave it all together, and I haven't been able to do any of that now, and I've been home. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey man, at least you fortunate. Good that you still have a job and that you are still working at home. That's the positive in all of it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I know, a lot of people have been going through a lot of different things. So that's the good fortune out of it all. Go ahead, AD. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
I'll say before we get into sports and football and everything else, I just got to ask you, Kris, what's the one show that you had a chance to binge over these 6 months that you finally caught up with, that you wanted to catch up with for so long?
I would probably have to say that I started watching Lucifer, which started on one of the major networks and then it migrated to Netflix.
Right.
And so I caught up on that, but I also caught up on a lot of other stuff too. Like Last Chance U came out. I watched that probably over a weekend. I mean, it didn't take very long to get through that one. I would probably say those are probably the two shows that I've had a real good opportunity to catch up on. And then there are some new series. I'm really big into cars, so Netflix has a number of car-related shows that were pretty cool, like Hyperdrive, which was a competition. And then on Amazon Prime, you had Grand Tour, which was the old Top Gear hosts from the BBC. I got caught up on that as well. So what I've tried to do is try not to use my weekends to continue to work and find ways to actually leave. Like, I work in this room, it's my office. I get out of this room and close the door, and I don't come back in here, until, maybe Monday morning or even Sunday night to try to have some type of separation. So yeah.
Get you a closed office sign. Put you a sign on the front door, just like one of those open and close signs, and just put it on the door and just say closed.
That's a good idea.
You're a reminder. Do not go in this room, Kris. Don't do it.
Good idea, because I need that. Because I work and I grind, and some people are just like, I don't understand how you get it done. But I had that mentality, like, some football players, you just got to do what you need to do to help the team out. It's not necessarily about you. It's about what your team can accomplish. And so I get inspired by not just players, but coaches as well. There are a number of coaches who have gotten doctorate degrees, master's degrees, and, I'm always inspired by them. And it fuels me. And but sometimes, you got to step away from all that too. And I find a way to try to do that as much as I can now.
That's awesome, man. So, we wanted to, like I said, one of the things with us bringing Kris on right now is to kind of give us an opportunity to kind of talk from a D2 football perspective, because I think a lot of the attention, especially over the last couple months, has really been focused on the FCS level, especially the MEAC and the SWAC. I mean, even though it's interesting that it was a Division II HBCU that really started the ball rolling. I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was Morehouse that sort of made the first jump to suspend. And then right after that, of course, we had the report that AD worked on about the SIAC. Then you had the CIAA and SIAC conference deciding to suspend before the MEAC and SWAC even did. So I guess I'll first come to you, Kris, and kind of say, with what happened with the division, with CIAA and the SIC, it's been real quiet since that announcement. What are you hearing, since that time? And everybody kind of fell in line and sort of said, all right, we're all going to bow down and we're not going to play. But it's been quiet. really quiet ever since. I mean, even on the website, I went to the websites today. It's a ghost town on the websites. I mean, I understand it, but it's just odd.
Well, the CIAA was very proactive in trying to figure out a way to make this happen, make this work. But unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're depending on how you view not playing football in the fall, they just decided to postpone to the spring. And I certainly had some concerns about playing football in the spring. Namely, you play football in the spring, and then you're not really. Are you playing for an NCAA championship? Which I think there are some CIAA schools that use that as a that's their pitch and that's what they're aiming for. Are you playing for that or not? Are you going to be able to have people, hopefully nobody gets injured in the spring, because then you have the fall and people were planning to have fall football as well. They were, the commissioner and all the presidents and they were very, very, fairly transparent about the process and kind of working through it. But they ultimately decided, not to do anything about it. And honestly, if I were a betting man, I think the question becomes for the CIAA in particular, but I think the SIAC has a similar issue. How do you manage basketball and football in the spring? That's the cash cow for the CIAA, and then the SIAC had a very successful tournament as well. So how do you balance all of that? And the NCAA in general and the Division II councils, they ended up expanding out the number of games that you could play in the fall and not lose eligibility. And that also, my understanding is it kicks in for the spring as well. So there's a lot of logistical hurdles. I mean, there were a lot of conferences in Division II that opted to not sponsor football in the fall, but you do have some of their more Western-based schools that are opting to play some games, and even one of my alma maters, West Texas A&M, is looking at doing a full 10-game schedule now in the fall. So this fall, they have slowly expanded their schedule out because the Lone Star was really, really an interesting dynamic. The CIAA and SIAC said, we're not going to sponsor it in the fall. We're not going to play. But you had other conferences like the Lone Star that you had some folks who were more in the rural areas in the western edge. So like the West Texas, New Mexico area that wanted to play. And then you had a number of schools in more metropolitan or near urban centers that did not want to play. So there are schools that have decided, like Angelo State in West Texas, they're going to play. Whereas a school like Commerce, closer to Dallas, is not playing this fall. So, and then Colorado is the same way. You have a number of schools in Colorado, South Dakota that are going to play kind of a round robin style format amongst the four of them, and a few other schools integrated that are not in the RMAC. But yeah, I mean, I think that, those schools are choosing to play in the fall. So they don't really have the burden of trying to figure out fall and spring sports at the same time, whereas the CIAA has to figure that out, and the SIAC has to figure that out. And how does that work? I don't really know. How many games do you play? It's kind of hard to tell. But it's certainly an interesting test, and I'm sure that that's what the questions are behind closed doors.
Yeah, AD, you got a question for Kris?
Kris, considering that the SIAC and the CIAA both came out with their statement, basically a joint statement saying we're not going to play football this fall. How do you see that as forecast on what they may do in the spring together, as far as possibly meshing the two schedules together, if both decide not to go to the Division II playoffs, assuming there are Division II playoffs, them possibly getting together in a Celebration Bowl style game. That'll be question number one, that I've got a follow-up to that.
So, it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, there's always been this thought about trying to do like a Pioneer Bowl again. Like, for those who may not remember, the Pioneer Bowl was kind of like this bowl game between the SIAC and CIAA champions. A lot of times it was considered to be the Tuskegee Invitational, but then Tuskegee decided that they were going to get into the playoffs, go to the playoffs. So what ended up happening is you ended up getting like the second or even third best team, as the CIAA got two playoff teams in from occasionally. So there wasn't enough sponsorship around to make it continue to work. It was kind of unfortunate because you started to see more people get involved and play. I think one of the hurdles that you have to doing a championship game or some type of like Division II Celebration Bowl, Pioneer Bowl, is how comfortable with the fans feel about going to a game like that in this environment. You have a lot of schools that already don't travel very well, and there may be instances where you don't really have any fans or very few fans in the stands. So, how does all that work with money? Because that's a real hurdle at the Division II level. It would be kind of nice to see the SIAC and the CIAA come together to do kind of like those crossover matchups like some other Division II conferences are doing now. But I think you got real questions about money because you're not getting anything at the gate, or very little at the gate. So I don't see it happening. I think that the schools will probably stay in their respective conferences and probably within their respective divisions for much of the schedule. I don't see a 10-game schedule being played either. Maybe something like 6 or 7 games would be played. But, I think that in the current landscape where you have a lot of like regional issues happening, where schools are starting to reconsider their regional alignments, there's some cases for outlier schools like Kentucky State and Central State. What do they do? Do they continue being more so aligned with the more of the history and schools that are like them, or do they start thinking about schools that are much closer to them and going to those conferences instead? And I think you do see some of that happening at the FCS level with the MEAC schools leaving. So certainly something to think about, but I just don't see a situation right now where you have the two conferences coming together in the spring, because the biggest draw to that will be the gate and how many fans can you get in the stands, and you're not going to I don't think you're going to have a lot of fans in the stands in the spring.
All right, now my follow-up question then, and I've talked to a few SIDs around the SIAC conference. Haven't talked to any from the CIAA, but how do you think they're going to manage basketball, which is the in-season sport, men's and women's basketball? Football is the cash cow, assuming that we can get a couple hundred people in the stands or a couple thousand people into the stands, where some of them don't even draw a couple thousand people, but you know what I mean when I say that. But you still got volleyball, indoor track, outdoor track, tennis. They may possibly try to do cross country. And well, not for the CIAA, they don't have baseball, but the SIAC has baseball, and they both have softball. How they anything you've heard out there about how they could possibly manage this, considering that their staffs are a heck of a lot more limited than a SWAC or a MEAC staff is?
And they're probably more limited than, I would say, some of the more well-funded D2 schools too. And I think that's a really big question, because I would say you probably got, the gender and equity rule was Title IX to consider if you're going to do something like that. I think, they're probably keeping people on scholarship, but, there's a lot of logistics involved. There, if you think about it for a second, you do have overlap between football and basketball late in the football season, early in the basketball season. So, because you have that overlap, it was kind of nice when you can like go to a football game during the day, you can go to a basketball game in the evening. You made it an all day affair. Do people have that kind of time on their hands week after week, other than students? Even if they even had that kind of time, to do something like that, that would be a question. But with all that going on, I don't really know. I really haven't heard anything as to how that could work. It's been, like I said, it's been really quiet on that front, but that's certainly a lot to consider. And, you really can't just play football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and that's it. That's a pretty uneven deal. And I'm sure other athletes would like to play as well, even if they still are on scholarship.
A lot of temporary job opportunities out there for somebody. That'll be interesting to see.
Statisticians will be at premium.
Yeah. I need to go ahead and get my certification and learn how to do that, because a lot of schools may be hiring come that time of year. So look, we understand. That we're missing we're seeing football being played. And that's the part that I think is real interesting now. You're seeing it no matter what your, just in general, what you believe, whether they should or should not be playing, they are. They're playing in high school. They're playing in college now. The pros, the NFL's playing. And so it got me to thinking, man, what kind of stuff are we missing out on? I feel like if everything were normal, what were we missing? What kind of things that, and I got to thinking about coaching debuts and just games that would be happening. And so, we're going to get into that, but you already mentioned one of the things, Kris, the games this weekend, and that's always one of the interesting things at the beginning of the season in the first couple weeks of September at the Division II level, because you've got the non-conference schedule. And I thought there were some really good matchups in the non-conference schedule. But this particular weekend, September 19th, if everything would have played out right, you already mentioned going to Bowie State versus Texas A&M Commerce, right? Which I was just watching. They were D2 football put a top 10 Division II football programs of the decade, and I'm going to call them TAMU Commerce. I don't know if they go by any other acronym other TAMU.
Is that like FAMU?
Huh?
Is that like FAMU?
It doesn't roll off the tongue as nice as FAMU. So TAMU. Anyway. TAMU Commerce, number 10, the decade. That was one of the matchups this weekend. But you also had Winston-Salem State would have been at Tuskegee. You would have had Valdosta State at Albany State. A game that last year I overhyped. Miles at Morehouse, and Clark Atlanta at Tennessee State. So, I mean, any of those games, when you think about what we're missing out on, or if there are any other preseason, I shouldn't say preseason, early conference games, Kris, that kind of caught your eye to like, man, we missed out on a good matchup.
Well, in the CIAA in particular, Bowie State had a very, very, very aggressive schedule. They were going to play New Haven to start the season, and that's always a competitive team in the Northeast 10, and they finished with a winning record last year. But then they were going to play Saginaw Valley, which is out of the GLIAC, the Great Lakes Conference, and most people know of Grand Valley, who's also in that same conference. And that would have been really interesting to see. And then they would have traveled to East Texas to play Commerce. And so, I was really interested to see how Bowie would respond to that. I thought that the New Haven game was very winnable for them, and the Saginaw Valley game could certainly be a bit of a toss-up. And then the Commerce game, which is kind of like the heavyweight. And I really wanted to see how they would hold up over time, how, a little bit more maturity on the offense. The defense, had a lot returning. And I think, we saw how they could play against like a Carson Newman that, you only have 1 week to prepare for the option offense. And they, really held their ground on that in the playoffs last year. So I was really looking forward to that. I know that a lot of folks were probably looking forward to like Winston-Salem State and Tuskegee, and also Winston-Salem State renewing their rivalry game with North Carolina Central.
Yeah.
So I think that was going to be a game that had a pretty big attendance. I was really curious to see a couple of other schools. One was going to be Virginia State because they had the quarterback from North Carolina Central transfer there. Was it Chauncey Caldwell?
Oh, really? That's where he transferred to. Okay.
Yeah. So I was really curious to see because they needed to replace a quarterback there, and they had more so like redshirt freshmen on the roster, and then they got him. So, and they had like this revived rushing attack that we hadn't really seen since the likes of Trent Cannon left. So I was really curious to kind of see how they would go about things. And then, we had Virginia Union was going to get Tobias Taylor back.
Yeah.
So that was going to be huge to see that because he had opted out early to go to the draft. And when he couldn't get a workout, then he petitioned the NCAA and got an extra year. So, there's a lot of that going on that I was really looking forward to seeing. I think Shaw was kind of on the cusp of something really great with a lot of their offense. They're finally getting an offense to kind of match the defense. And then they were also getting back their star player, Devon Hunt, who got hurt early last year. So, it's kind of like, would that be enough to finally take over the South after years of rebuilding? There was so many storylines in the conference, in the CIAA in particular, that I was just really looking forward to seeing and writing about and watching and attending in person. And there are just so many games, so many storylines to kind of to pay attention to. So.
You mentioned a couple. You mentioned Shaw, Virginia State, Virginia Union. This is the first two games that Shaw had. Shaw was traveling to A&T, North Carolina A&T, and then the following week they were traveling to Miles. I mean, it doesn't get any better than an opening two games, against two conference favorites, champions. I mean, Shaw. Just imagine if Shaw were to come out of those two games 2-0. I mean, they're easily ranked, and really the table, like you said, is set for the expectations would be really high going into the season. And then Virginia State, they got Norfolk State and Tuskegee. That was their first two games of the year.
Right.
Virginia Union, Hampton, and Lenore-Rhyne. I mean, my God, their first. I think Virginia Union was on the road initially for the first 4 games of the season. Virginia Union was on the road. If I look at this little schedule thing, and you already mentioned the Winston-Salem, against North Carolina Central. Then you're playing Tuskegee. I mean, man,
Virginia State was going to play Tuskegee as well.
Yeah.
That was an awesome game to watch, I believe. There are so many games that we're going to be really good to watch. I mean, the one shocker of a game that I thought was really unique was Presbyterian, which is a FCS school, was going to be traveling to John C. Smith in Charlotte.
Okay.
And you know, to get a home game like that was a pretty big deal. There was just so many games to really kind of watch and pay attention to in out of conference play that we're just not going to get a chance to see. But yeah, I mean, you had some really tough schedules here, and I think you kind of see that these, you know, there are schools that really wanted to kind of schedule up and take advantage of that, and also take advantage of sort of the pomp and circumstance that comes with Black college football on top of that. So it's unfortunate. The other thing I do want to mention, though, is this year I think you start to see a little bit more of the Division II FCS matchups, HBCU and matchups, and otherwise. Those games have kind of fallen off for a couple of years, but you start to see kind of like the renewing of some of those rivalries. You know, it's like almost more than half of the schools, it seems like, had, you know, a game against a FCS opponent. John C. Smith had one, Dell State and St. Aug, Shaw and A&T, Virginia State and Norfolk, Hampton, and VUU and Winston and Central. So those are games that were certainly going to help with, you know, getting guarantees, getting people into the seats that are not going to happen this year.
You also had you had Albany, FAMU. Fort Valley State was scheduled to play travel to Alcorn State, and Fort Valley was going to Miles. Clark, you mentioned Clark, Tennessee State. Tuskegee, Alabama State. By the way, Drew, we would have debated this. This would have been a hell of a debate. Toughest non-conference schedule. Tuskegee starts out with at Alabama State, hosting Virginia State, and then traveling to Winston-Salem. I mean, that's tough, man. That is talk about scheduling. And then Central State, they got Howard. That was supposed to be the what was that? The Pro Football Hall of Fame Classic at the beginning of the year, I think.
Yeah, a little bit really interesting, and I'm looking at some of these. Yeah, I really can't see anybody who in the SIEC who had a tougher schedule to open up non-conference than Tuskegee. I mean, I'm just going down this Tuskegee schedule. Realistically, and I hate to say this, Tuskegee had a real distinct possibility going into the Morehouse Classic 0-5.
Oh, yeah, because the next two games, they're playing Kentucky State and Albany State, right, at home.
I mean, I'm just being real. You know, the only thing is three of those first 5 games at home, and if you've ever been in Abbott Stadium at 1 o'clock on the Saturday in August and September, you know, Virginia State was going to have problems because the humidity from Petersburg, Virginia to Tuskegee, Alabama is totally different. Same thing with Kentucky State. Albany State would have been used to the humidity being down in the South, but those would have been interesting. But, you know, Albany State didn't have a cupcake schedule either with FAMU, Mississippi College, and Valdosta State. I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah. But, Chris, there were 6 CIAA SIAC matchups early in the season. No, 7. There were 7 of them. 7 CIAA SIAC matchups early in the season. Who was going to win the season series? And let me give you those who we had. Week 1, September 5th, Clark, Livingstone hosted Clark. Then week 2, Livingstone, Savannah State, Shaw at Miles, Virginia State at Tuskegee. Week 3, Fayetteville State at Benedict, Lincoln, PA at Kentucky State, and Winston-Salem at Tuskegee. That's 7 matchups. Who was going to win the season series between the SIAC and CIAA?
So we had, let's see, Fayetteville State played Benedict in week 3. I would have picked Fayetteville to win that one. That game wasn't even as close as the score indicated last year. And then you've got
Kentucky State.
Say what?
Lincoln, PA, and Kentucky State.
Kentucky State. I mean, even though that's probably a winnable game, I really haven't seen Lincoln put it together on defense to give their offense a chance. And they lost some key players last year on defense. So I think Kentucky State would have easily taken that game.
All right, so we won Winston-Salem, Tuskegee. Week 3.
So Winston went to Tuskegee last year and beat them on their home field, which I think, kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. Yeah. and I really think that, it's a little bit harder to beat Winston at home. And they certainly had some rebuilding that they were doing. I just don't see Tuskegee winning that game in North Carolina.
All right, so we got 2 for the CIAA thus far. Let's go back a week. Livingstone, Savannah.
Oh, Savannah all day.
Oh, well, Savannah would have taken that one. Again, that's another team that runs an option style, multiple set offense. That's going to keep that Livingstone defense off balance. Livingstone is breaking in a new coach. There were certainly a lot of disgruntled players on there, and I think they also there are some players that weren't returning. It's kind of hard to say what Livingstone's offense would look like with the graduation and some of those players not returning. But Savannah State, I mean, they're a pretty explosive offense, and that's a lot for, I think, rebuilding Livingstone to take on. So I think Savannah State would have had that game.
All right, we 2-2. Just for those of you all who out there keep the score, Shaw travels to Miles.
That's an interesting game. Miles has that potent rushing attack, and they try to keep you off balance. Shaw is very similarly built. With Torrin Campbell at quarterback and Sidney Gibbs, who was really, really good at running back as a true freshman, and really was a contender for Rookie of the Year. I think that one probably comes down to whether Shaw has enough consistency to keep up with Miles to grind it out. That was a 50-50 game. So in those type of games, and them traveling to Miles, I think Miles would win that game.
Virginia State traveling down south to Tuskegee. Mind you, the only time Reggie Barlow has beaten Tuskegee in his career is when he traveled with his Virginia State team down to Tuskegee. So Tuskegee could pick up the extra game to get into the playoffs.
That was the 45-35 game.
I was there.
Well, Virginia State, I really like what Reggie Barlow is doing at Virginia State. It took a couple of years to kind of get past that historic season in 2017 to get back to where they are right now, contending again. The thing about Virginia State I really like in this game against Tuskegee is that they can wear you down. They have three guys that can continuously pound you on the ground. And if Caldwell can really keep the balance there in the air, it really forces a lot of issues for Tuskegee there. Tuskegee really had a hard time putting points on the board last year, and it just really showed. Even when their defense could keep up, the offense wasn't really producing, and that's not a good sign when you go against an above average defense like Virginia State. So I think Virginia State would have carried this game.
So with 3-3, here's the rubber match. We're going to go backwards. We're working at week 1. And 2 teams that have not lived up to expectations the last few years get to break this tie. Livingstone, Clark Atlanta travels to Livingstone.
This was a game that I really misjudged last year. I thought Clark Atlanta would have more than enough at home to take care of Livingstone. It did not work out that way. This is another 50-50 game because you know with at least Livingstone, you know that you got Miles Hayes at quarterback, who's a seasoned quarterback at this point. That you know they will have something on offense. You know it's kind of a revenge game for Clark, and the question is, can Clark keep them out of the end zone, and do they have the defense to match up with the offense? And they certainly didn't have much offense last year, so. I probably would, again, 50-50 go with the home team here and go with Livingstone, but it's a real 50-50 game.
So Kris has it 4-3 CIAA in the crossover matches. Bryan, do you concur? Or
it just kind of works out that way. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. There wasn't a game in there. Like I said, the Winston-Salem Tuskegee game is probably the game that I might disagree on, because I think, Kris, you picked Winston-Salem on the road. I would possibly
Winston-Salem's at home on that game.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, what I was saying is I know they went on the road last year and won. I would possibly, without really knowing who's the quarterback or just what Tuskegee has. That's the game that I might go opposite and go Tuskegee on the road payback. But then again, let me pull up where is that game would have been the third game after Alabama State and Virginia State. So, if Tuskegee looked good in those two games, I would definitely ride them and say, hey, going to Winston-Salem, they can win that game. But. So that's probably the one game I might differ, but everything else pretty much on point. And I continue to as long as every breath we have, the CIAA and the SIC should have a week. I'm saying just book a 1 week, and man, that would be awesome. And just match them up, let them play, and I think. All of us who cover, I think it'd be a great opportunity to really talk about those two conferences and the play and everything. I think it should happen, but that's me. But again, we're close. 7 games is not bad. One day we'll get the full 12, or give me 10. I'll take 10 in 1 week. But again, I keep saying 1 week.
Got one other thing on the schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Bryan. All right, Kris. I first time I really actually looked at the schedule like this, I noticed Allen has 2 games against CIAA opponents. Elizabeth City in week 2, and then they play Livingstone in week 3. Question of the day: is Allen making an audition with them making a transition from NAIA to Division II? Are they auditioning for the CIAA? Will they wind up in the SIAC, or will they wind up somewhere else?
There's not a lot of options for Allen in Division II for them to choose. So, I think it really does come down to the CIAA or the SIAC, because I don't see them going to like the Gulf South. I don't know if they'd win a game anytime soon there right now. So I think you're really stuck with one of those 2 options. And being that they are in South Carolina, the SIAC might be a slightly better fit for them. And the only reason why I say that is because you do have this scenario where you have uneven divisions right now in football. And that would be a good fit, easy choice for the SIC to make.
But there's another team on the east side, and when you already have an Ever Waters, when they finally, if they finally come into the SIC, would be coming in on the east side, you're going to get into this SWAC debate, who shifts west. Now, I have my logic on who needs to shift west, but once again, they have to have that debate.
Yeah, and I forgot about Edward Waters, and that's a good point. I mean, so then you faced with uneven divisions, in either conference if they take Allen in. So, which way do you really go? Now, there is a bit of a wild card here, and I suspect that the CIAA could be the conference that has uneven divisions if Conference Carolinas gets up running on football, because Chowan, is a school that has already shifted most of their sports outside of the CIAA now. So that will be, a real question mark as to, does Conference Carolinas get going? And because like this year, Chowan is playing Erskine, which was one of those teams. Do they get up going? Do they, does Conference Carolina get UNC Pembroke from the Mountain East, which they're Mountain East only, they're only there for football. So they could grab them, they can grab Erskine. Barton is starting football. So, there could be a opportunity that Chowan may choose to take to jump. And then when that happens, you're going to have uneven divisions again, and that may lead to an option for like an Allen to fill that slot for the CIAA. So it's certainly an interesting prospect. UNC Pembroke did move their conference affiliation outside of football from the Peach Belt to Conference Carolinas. So I doubt that they will be a candidate to replace Chowan now if they're going to try to put it all together with them. So, I think that there could be an opportunity where the CIAA kind of has a hole there, and Allen can fit that hole. So certainly an option there.
The other thing I would add about why Allen, I think, is a better fit in the CIAA is because of the city that they're in. There's already a team in the SIAC in that city, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Benedict is already...
There are two teams in Atlanta in the SIAC next door to each other. Allen and Benedict are across the street from each other, so what's the difference?
Benedict versus Atlanta, the city of what? Columbia? Where
South Carolina.
Huh?
Yeah, both of them are in Columbia, South Carolina. Benedict.
Yeah, I mean, I know
they're literally across the street from each other.
Yeah, well.
But that's like Raleigh. Raleigh has Shaw and St. Aug.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, there goes that argument. I get, yeah, you guys blew that out the water. But, all right, good points. Good point. I didn't know Allen was, I knew they were close. I didn't know they were that close.
Yeah,
so
you could walk from one campus to the other and not know the difference.
Coaching debuts that are coming into this season in the CIAA, we've got, I counted four new coaches that would have, well, three and a possible. Let's call it like that. Because
playing spades over here?
Huh?
Playing spades over here? Three and a possible?
Well, and the reason I say impossible because you technically, because it's a technicality. I mean, look, let's be real. A couple of coaches that have been on staff. You got over at Chowan, you got Mark Hall, who'd been there for the past 11 seasons as the OC. And then I said the possible is Robert Massey at Winston-Salem because, yeah, he was the interim last year, but they got a new AD. They didn't give him – I've never heard of a coach being tagged with an interim for a second consecutive year. So it's like you got a new AD. If I'm not mistaken, they got a new AD. I was reading some articles, and the AD was like, well, I'm paraphrasing here. We'll give you another year. Let's see how this year goes. And then all of a sudden, all of the stuff with COVID happens. So he technically is still on an interim basis, even though he was there a year. So that's why I say he was the possible. And then you got two new coaches, literally brand new in Sean Gilbert, and then David Bowser over at Sean Gilbert's at Livingstone. David Bowser is taking over at St. Aug after being at Fayetteville State for 20 years. I mean, literally helping build that Fayetteville State program. That's always interesting when you spend 2 decades somewhere building it up, and then all of a sudden you're like, maybe I've been passed over or whatever the reason is. It's like I'm going to finally take an opportunity. So, I mean, there's a story there, I'm sure. Kris, what are your thoughts on the new coaching hires or the new coaching seasons that have been delayed?
Well, there are certainly some very intriguing things about each one of these situations. So in the case of Trowan, I think that was a very unfortunate situation that happened to Tim Place there, who had been there for quite some time. And you really don't know all of the details of what happened there, but he was let go, and they replaced him with Mark Hall. And Coach Hall is, directs a very potent offense. Trowan's problems really resided on defense and injuries, and that's year in and year out. That's the issue with them. They can't seem to put together a strong defense across the board like a Bowie State or Virginia State, Virginia Union, to hang with those guys. And so, they got a defensive coordinator that came from the PSAC, very good in the secondary, which you kind of need in a CIAA North division that likes to air out the football quite a bit. And so I'm really curious to see how that shakes up for them, because they've always been kind of on that cusp, and they've always been like really close to having a breakout season, and so I expect the offense to be very potent. They have a lot of weapons. It's whether the defense can really step up and rise to the occasion. In the case of St. Aug with Coach Bowser, St. Aug is one of those places that it's kind of hard to really gauge how good a coach really is if you have a lot of instability at the school, and we certainly saw a lot of that in the offseason. So I think, just by looking at the recruiting for St. Aug, they've done some really good things in recruiting. They certainly have a lot of young talent there that can certainly put it together. The question is, staffing around Coach Bowser as his, in his first head coach position, how he performs with that talent around him. That's going to be a real question mark in what is, kind of a soft division in the CIAA South. So I think that's a really intriguing thing to look at. I think that, he's going to bring a really good attitude, positive attitude that they really need there. But I don't know if that will really be enough there. It's kind of hard to tell. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're talking about hard to tell, on top of that, you got Livingstone, and Livingstone hires a guy that hasn't even coached on the college level. He was a high school coach, and I think he was a high school assistant coach. Right. So he has an NFL career, but does that really translate to coaching? It's kind of hard to tell. And there were so many issues with Livingstone. The offense wasn't always clicking very well. The defense, would have flashes of really good play at individual positions, but as a unit, surrendered a lot of points. That's an even tougher position to be in, where St. Aug certainly, they had that upset of Fayetteville State, last year. But with Livingstone, you think that, they could probably put something together, but it just doesn't really materialize very well. So again, I have even more questions at Livingstone than I do at St. Aug, but at least you have a coach at St. Aug that knows the conference, knows the division, and you got some real question marks at the head coach level for Livingstone. And then the one thing I always pay attention to at the beginning of the season is not just the head coaches, but the coordinators, because the coordinators can really make or break your team and your season and your schemes. And this is where I would say that I think Winston-Salem State really caught a break here because, they lost, Fayetteville State lost a couple of coordinators and head coaches. If you think about Fort Valley, so Fort Valley got was the offensive coordinator from Fayetteville State as their head coach, takes the defensive coordinator from Fayetteville State with him there, and so Maurice Flowers, and Barry Tripp. So, now Fayetteville State has got to go back again, in consecutive years, like 3 or 4 consecutive years, and has to replace their offensive coordinator. And who are they going to turn to make that happen? Well, they went to Winston-Salem State and got Natron Means to be the offensive coordinator. So now, you've kind of got a little bit of that happening where you're stealing from one team to another. Well, Winston-Salem State did promote from within for the offensive coordinator, but then they don't have head coaches. They don't have other coaches to surround those primary positions. So I think Winston caught a bit of a break with the pandemic, as weird as that sounds, because they're going to need some time to rebuild that coaching staff, and there hasn't been a whole lot to come out of that just yet. So I think that's going to be a real question mark when we talked about Chowan and some changes that are needed there. So, there would have been some really interesting things I think that would have been happening from the coaching perspective. Was really looking forward to seeing how some of that would materialize. But I think those head coaches, those brand new head coaches, are going to have a hard time to start out. If you think about St. Aug for a second, they were going to start the season with Lenore Ryan, Limestone, and Delaware State. I mean, that's a tough schedule to start your head coaching career on. So it would have been really tough, I think, for each of those head coaches.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm still there. I don't know if my signal went bad there for a second.
I was gonna say, speaking, you mentioned Coach Flowers over in the SIAC there, Kris. What about some of the other coaching changes in the SIAC? You've got new coaches at Benedict, Central State, and Lane.
So out of those coaches, I think you have Shennis Berry at Benedict. I think that was going to be a pretty good hire for them. They kind of Benedict had like one really good season with Albany's old head coach, and so I think that was a good move to try to figure out if something else could work. And the same at Central State and Lane as well. You got some folks that do have some coordinator experience that are going into those roles, and so I think that'll be good. But the question there is just going to be resources. These are schools that seem to have like one really good season, and then they kind of fall back to the basement for a period of time. And so, can something like this help, where you have a lot of talent in, say, in the Columbia and the South Carolina area? Can you get some of that talent to come in, or can you get some good transfers to come in to help? I think, the team that won the offseason with the coaching is Fort Valley State. I think, with Coach Flowers, if you followed him, he's certainly had, quarterbacks that he's a quarterbacks coach first. And so he's certainly gotten the best out of those quarterbacks. And you certainly have some talent there at Fort Valley to make it happen. They also got some talent from other CIAA schools. The Rookie of the Year in last year transferred to Fort Valley from John C. Smith, Emmanuel Wilson. The kicker that they got transferred from St. Aug there, who certainly had a pretty good leg on him. And then you got some really good wideouts. He's got a lot of tools to work with there, and and as a recruiter, he can certainly recruit like that Peach County and Warner Robins, Macon area quite well, and there's a lot of talent there. So
Columbus, Georgia.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that if you got somebody who really can, I think flourish. I think it's Fort Valley as the team to watch in the SIAC.
Kris, man, look, we appreciate you taking time out to chat with us. But look, I want to give you just want to throw one final softball to you and kind of say, what is there a storyline or a thought, team, player, assuming that we do have football in the spring, what's maybe the one storyline that you might be thinking about or, anticipating happening or being, of interest to you, assuming that there is spring football in the CIAA or even the SIC?
I think the storylines for the spring is going to be, how do these coaches opt to deploy their players? I mean, players certainly want to play, and there's that versus the safety given the pandemic and this virus, and there's a lot of fatigue in there. And I think, there's one thing where these games won't count against their eligibility, but do you risk, playing some of those players for extended periods of time versus getting some of those younger players experience for the fall? And so I think there's certainly some questions there as to, how do you deploy those players and how do you make that work for gearing up for the fall season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. I think that, if we go to an all-conference schedule, I think, those traditional rivalries will certainly be there, and you'll have, some really exciting games. But I think really a lot of stuff that's happening is more logistical than it is the actual games playing out as you see it. So that's kind of the thought process I kind of have there. I'm just really curious to see how it plays out, or whether we even will have spring football at this point.
Right. All right. Well, look, I know, you're always a good follow on Twitter at D2KFerg, correct? FERG?
Yes.
On Twitter. That is Kris is a great follow on Twitter, and hopefully we will get a chance to talk again before the end of the year. I'm hoping that the CIAA or SIC comes out and makes an announcement with their plans. If nothing else, give us something to talk about. Give us some excitement. Do what the SWAC and the MEAC did, which is give us some dates. Maybe give us a schedule. Give us something to look forward to. And, if things don't turn around, obviously you can cancel. But at least give us something. That's my one hope and wish, right?
Yeah, Big Ten brought it back, so I think,
anything is possible. Kris, man, hey, look, man, be well. Again, the beard is on. I mean, it's awesome, man. I continue to be jealous every time I see you. So, man, be well. Hope your family continues to do well, and we look forward to talking to you again, definitely before the end of the year. All right.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
All right, man. Again, Kris Ferguson, D2Football.com is where he normally is writing, but right now he is at home, and the beard is doing its thing. And at D2KFerg is where you can find him on Twitter. All right, we'll be back right after these words with more. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD.
Because the fight isn't over yet.
You will see me choose to protect my community by wearing a face cover.
And even with my face covered,
you will see me.
As a son.
As a man with a never quit attitude.
As a fighter for change.
Join me in wearing a face cover.
To help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because this is one small act of kindness
that has the power to make a big difference.
This is
Ryan Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
The census, when counting everyone in your home, helps support your neighborhood for the next 10 years.
Let's go home and count Papi!
Make your family count!
The census helps fund schools, healthcare, and more. Visit 2020census.gov.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Want to thank our good friend Kris Ferguson, D2Football.com. Kris, for joining us in the last segment and talking to us as we kind of opine about things that we would have been doing had COVID not affected the SIAC and the CIAA's ability to play football games. Reminding you, take a look, make sure you're logging on and following the BCSN on Twitter, Instagram, and of course Facebook at MyBCSN1, the number one. Download the Jericho Broadcasting app. That's where you're going to find our show. You get alerts all the time, as well as Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. That show you'll be able to get via our app. Go to Google and Apple Play stores you just need to type in MyJBN or MyBCSN, and that's you'll get a direct link to that. We're also on Spotify, Anchor, Google, and Apple Podcasts. New segment, Drew, as we close up the show here. I figure with the NFL being back in play, we got to have a picks contest, Drew. We would have normally had a college football picks contest. I don't know. I lost count. I think I beat you in season 2. You won season 1. I think I beat you in season 2.
You sure?
I'm unofficially claiming.
Okay. As long as it's unofficial. Don't
yeah, because what I won't be doing is going back and listening to those shows, and I didn't keep track. So, but I just felt like I beat you more times than you beat me. How about that?
I'm gonna let you have that.
All right, appreciate you. Thank you. What I thought to do is, last week we talked about the HBCU guys that are playing on NFL rosters, and there are 16 teams that have NFL guys on them, or have HBCU players on them. So I said to Drew, Drew, we got to pick. So we're gonna take those NFL games, teams that have HBCU players, and we're gonna pick those games. So for example, you're gonna have at least most of the matchups are going to be teams with an HBCU player going up against a team that doesn't. Or you're going to have 2 teams that both have an HBCU player. So we'll go down and we'll do that. And I also will give a little nugget. The players from those teams, we'll kind of look at how they did last week out on the field. So, Drew, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First game out the box, Thursday night game, Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. Of course, for Cleveland, they've got 2 active HBCU players. Jamie Gillen, the punter, who had 3 punts for 45.7-yard average in week 1. Kadario Hodge, a wide receiver, he had 1 catch for 12 yards on 3 targets. This is a Thursday night contest. Bengals and Browns both lost in week 1. Drew, who you got?
First of all, why is this game even on Thursday night? This game should be buried at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Everybody's got to play. You can't avoid this game. Everybody, get it out the way now, please.
Get it out the way early. This wasn't really supposed.
Drew, it's early enough. it's early enough in the season, Drew. I can deal with Bengals and Browns in week 2. If this were week 9 or 10, I'd be upset. I'm just saying.
I got Cleveland.
I'm going Cincinnati, man. That was a winnable game for Cincinnati in week 1. And so I'm going with the kid, Joe Burrow, in week, so give me that. All right, next game, LA Rams at the Eagles. Jason Hargrave, right defensive tackle for the Eagles, a South Carolina State grad. He did not play last week, but the Rams won against Dallas at home. Eagles lost after a horrible second half to the Redskins. Who you got?
Let's see. Eagles looked like crap last week. Boy, and I just glanced at this quickly, but I thought that was the LA Raiders there for a second, Brian.
Yeah, it's weird how now all of a sudden those acronyms change.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with the Rams, even though I can't stand them. I'm gonna have to go with them.
I'm going with the Eagles, man. I think, as bad as you were last week to start the season, I think the attention to detail, you'll be better in week 2. Plus, the Rams coming off of a Sunday night game, having then turn around, travel all the way to the East Coast, and I think this is a 1 p.m. game. A lot of things playing against the Rams, so I'll take the Eagles. Next game up, Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Carolina, 2 HBCU guys, Trenton Cannon, the running back from Virginia State, and Trent Scott, offensive tackle from Grambling State. Both of those guys didn't play. Cannon is listed as a 3rd-string running back, and Trent Scott is the backup right tackle. Who you got, Carolina or Tampa, Drew?
How that song go? Teddy! Take a Teddy Bridgewater on this one, Brian. Carolina Panthers.
Carolina Panthers. I'm going with Tampa, man. I'm going with Brady. They didn't look – I think Carolina – Carolina may be a little bit better than people give them credit for being. But I'm going Tampa. I'm going with Tampa Bay, Tampa Tom, whatever little funny nickname you got. I'm going with Tampa. Next game on the docket, it's the AFC East showdown, Buffalo at Miami. Buffalo, of course, Daryl Johnson, the defensive end, who went to North Carolina A&T. He did not play in this game, even though last year he basically played in all 16 games last year as a rookie. So I didn't see any information as to why Johnson didn't play. Not sure if he's hurt. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Buffalo looked real impressive last week. They're 1-0 traveling to Miami. Who you got?
Miami looked like crap last week. I think they lost their game by 10 or 11 points. Buffalo has a good chance of winning the AFC East. Going to come down to Buffalo and New England probably. I'm going to go with the Bills in this one, Brian.
I'm going with the Bills as well. I think this could be a trap game though, AD. I'll tell you now. This could be a trap game for the Bills. Given how bad Tannehill looked last week, watch Fitzmagic break out this upcoming week. I'm just saying, I could see it happening, and the Bills can still play pretty well, but I'm thinking Fitzmagic is going
to go like Puff the Magic Dragon.
Right. All right, so that's the first one we're both in favor of. Minnesota at Indianapolis. The Colts, Darius Leonard, linebacker, South Carolina State, had 9 tackles, 4 solo, and then Grover Stewart, the defensive tackle for the Colts. He went to Albany State. He had 9 tackles. Grover Stewart had 4 tackles, three solo. Leonard had 9 tackles, 4 solo. Who you got, AD?
I already know what you're going to take, so I'm going to just take the other team.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm taking Indy, bounce back game for the good guys, and Minnesota will fall to 0-2. Hey, Kirk Cousins, how you like that? Or what's the phrase he says? You like that? You like that?
Yeah, you like
it. Another division rivalry. Detroit at Green Bay. Detroit had a chance to win after letting Chicago back in the ballgame last week. Green Bay looked really, really good. Can they keep it up? Tony McRae is a defensive back for North Carolina A&T. Believe he plays for the Lions. He did not play this past week. So who you got?
Give Aaron Rodgers a running game. He is deadly. Green Bay.
I'm with you. I'm going Green Bay. Next game on the docket, New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. Tariq Cohen of the Bears, 7 rushes for 41 yards, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 6 yards. I think overall he might have been the most productive HBCU guy on Sunday, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. Who you got, Giants or the Bears?
Bishop Trubisky, great comeback in that win of this past weekend. Jason Garrett, unfortunately, is up to some of the tricks that he used to pull in Dallas.
You noticed that too? Noticed that too? It looked like I was watching Dallas again. I'm not gonna lie.
Did Saquon Barkley look like Ezekiel Elliott not being used properly, like he wasn't used properly in Dallas? I'm going Chicago, bro.
I'm with you, dude. I'm going Chicago too. As scary as that is, I went Chicago as well. The Jacksonville Jaguars at Tennessee Titans. Now, this is a division matchup here. The Jags, if they can get a win, will go up over everybody else in the division. Tennessee had to snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat thanks to field goal kicking. Rodney Gunter, the defensive tackle from Delaware State, he had 1 solo tackle during the day, or during the game, excuse me. Who you got? Jacksonville, Tennessee.
Tennessee is gonna figure it out. They've got Derrick Henry back there in the backfield. Huh?
Go ahead, finish up. I'm sorry.
I say they've got Henry back there in the backfield. I think they're gonna learn. They know they got away with one this past week, so I think they're gonna get it right this week, Brian.
My upset special right here. Tennessee played the late game on Monday night in Mile High. So you're coming out of altitude and you didn't finish you probably didn't get on the bus until about 2 o'clock, 2:30. Jacksonville, big win over the Colts. Minshew Mania. Give me the Jaguars. I'll take Jacksonville on in this game. Next up, Washington at Arizona. Both teams have a HBCU player. Arizona has offensive tackle Joshua Miles, and the Redskins have defensive back Danny Johnson. Miles. Necessarily, I'm not sure if he played in this contest, but in general, the offensive line for the Cardinals gave up 2 sacks, but they did get 180 rushing yards in that game, and Daryl Johnson did not play Danny Johnson did not play. He's a defensive back, went to Southern. He did not play for Washington. So those are your 2 guys. Baltimore at Houston. This should be a good game. Might be a good game. Oh, I'm sorry. We got a pick. Yeah. Sorry.
I've got the Cardinals.
I got the Cardinals too. All right. There's another one we agree on. All right. Baltimore at Houston. Who are the HBCU players? All right. Baltimore has defensive back Anthony Levine. He did have a fumble recovery in that ball game for Baltimore. He's a Tennessee State grad. Titus Howard, right tackle for Houston, who was a #1 draft pick from Alabama State. He for the Texans. The Texans offensive line gave up 4 sacks, 118 offensive yards rushing is what they gained. So little Jekyll and Hyde there. I think this is a good spot. This is a good spot here. Who do you got, Baltimore or Houston?
I got Baltimore.
I've got Baltimore too. First I thought I had Houston. I started traveling down that road and saying, hey, this is a good spot for an upset. And I said, pump the brakes. Let me pump the brakes on that one. All right. Kansas City at the LA Chargers. So last week, the Rams got to play in the new stadium in LA. This week, the Chargers do. They go up against Patrick Mahomes with plenty of rest. Antonio Hamilton, the DB for Kansas City, had 3 tackles. He is out of South Carolina State. Kansas City at the Chargers. Who you got, Drew?
I rolled with my homeboy.
Mahomes and the Chiefs. I
got
Mahomes and the Chiefs as well. Kansas City, give me that one. And our last game for the picks contest, the New Orleans Saints at the Las Vegas Raiders. The new stadium gets christened in Las Vegas. Teron Armstead, the starting left tackle for New Orleans, was a part of an offensive line group that gave up 1 sack, but they rushed for 82 yards. New Orleans did. Interesting game when I went back and watched it and reviewed it. Then the Brandon Parker, offensive tackle for Las Vegas, he had his offensive unit had 0 sacks allowed, 133 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, who you got, Drew?
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I'm going with Vegas.
I'm with you as well. Upset. I think it's an upset, but it may not be. Hey, New Orleans doesn't play all that great on the road anyway, do they? I don't think so. So
they are playing in a.
They are what?
But the game is in a dome, so they.
Yeah. All right. So I see you've been keeping track there. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games that we agree on, and then all of the other games we don't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 disagreements. So we'll somehow have a separation of anywhere from 1 to
5 games.
1 to 5 games this week. All right, Drew. I'm going to give it over to you. Final thought before we shut it down and go home.
2 quick thoughts, Brian. Number 1, kudos goes out to the attorney Benjamin Crump for getting a $12 million settlement for the family of Breonna Taylor. We all know the tragic story of what she had, but for him to get what has been reported, the largest class action suit won by an African-American for a wrongful death against a police department in U.S. history. Kudos to Benjamin Crump. Too bad that he had to do that because in 2020, we should not be having to do things like that. We should have never had to sue them in the first place if they would have done their job the proper way. But I know it'll never bring her back, but it can offer some relief. And not only did they get the money, but they were also able to get some reforms as part of the settlement package. That's number one. And then number two, I'll end this the same way that I did last week, Brian. Please fill out your census. It's due September 30th. This is free money for your community. Free money for your community. Potholes, schools, roads, businesses, federal programs. It even helps with financial aid for those who are in college or have people who want to go to college, infrastructure at universities, all different types of things that are related. And even for some people who happen to be on unemployment right now, some of those things are related to census dollars as far as how much money is allocated to your state and your community.
All right. Well said, AD. Well said. I don't have anything great to say. I thought you said it all right there. So I want to remind you, follow Drew on Twitter at BCSN Drew. Find me on Twitter at DRB365. Of course, the show, we are everywhere. We're on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like, thumbs up, subscribe. My JBN Online is our YouTube channel. We do stream live shows. So if you're a subscriber, you'll get alerts to that. If you have our Jericho broadcast, say again.
I said, make sure you watch our interview later on this week with with some of the staff members from Xavier University of New Orleans as they talk about their move from the GCAC to the Red River Conference.
Okay. You can pick up any of that. Also, make sure you have the MyJBN or the Jericho Broadcast Networks app, MyJBN or MyBCSN. And so either one of those, when we go live or when we drop those shows, you will get instant alerts. And then, the podcast, we're on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, almost everywhere you consume podcasts, we are there. Just search for us, BCSN SportsWrap. And that's it.
Make sure Tuesday night you watch Dr. Kavir's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, which is also here on the Jericho Broadcast family of networks. Gonna have a special surprise for you Tuesday night on there. Been privy to see the pre-show notes already for Tuesday night show.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, nice tease. Okay. Good job. Interesting. Any hints? Any hint you can give? Or no, it'll give it away?
It's just Tuesday night at my BCSN1 or my JBN online, and then you shall see.
7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 Central is what time Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab airs. All right, that's going to do it for this show. Thank you for watching. Special shout out to our friend Kris Ferguson for joining us. For AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this experience as I choke away here on some phlegm or whatever it is that's caught my throat. You've been watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. Let me do that again. You've been watching, you've been watching and listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. I'm out. I'm tired. Voice is gone. Thank you. Peace out.
Peace. I holla.
But my beats, they are hard.